And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We're talking Lando Norris's soaking up the pressure to win the Hungarian Grand Prix after, let's be fair, a typical choke Norris start. And it was situation reversed really, with Piastri catching Lando as Lando was trying to catch Piastri at the Belgian Grand Prix. Both race winners showing masterclass of looking after those Pirellis, the tyre whisperers in that McLaren, although as we know that McLaren car is very good at looking after its tyres anyway. But I digress. Let's talk about all the big talking points coming out of the Hungarian Grand Prix. So Lando Norris is our race winner, your race winner, and I think he did a really good job, to the point where I was actually somewhat surprised that it was Gabriel Bortoleto, driver of the race. I thought, okay, he's definitely the second best. Surely Lando, in spite of that very bad start, let's say, more than made up for that whoops-a-daisy. But there we go. I'm just one person, but here's your top 10. It was Lando Norris, Piastri, Russell. That's your top 3. I know George Russell, yet another podium. I did say Mercedes go well here. So in 4th, Charles Leclerc. 5th, Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin. Well done to him. Gabriel Bortoleto in 6th position. To be fair, actually, you've got to give it to him in what was arguably, as I said, one of the worst cars at the beginning of the season. Both the drivers and the team, I think, are getting the absolute maximum. They kind of like, at this point, they remind me, if you remember, of the old Force India. They put their cars in positions where it probably shouldn't have been. So 7th, Lance Stroll. Well done to Lance as well, getting 7th. I had my doubts, so he did well, didn't he? Liam Lawson, 8th. Yes, we're talking about Liam Lawson beating Max Verstappen. I think the last time anything significant like that happened was Singapore qualifying all the way in 2023, and Liam Lawson knocked him out. And last but no means least, Kimi Antonelli. I think, yes, it's only the 1 point, but I think he'll be happy scoring that 1 point. So if you want to go from 11th to 20th, we've got Hadjar, Hamilton, disaster, wasn't it, for Hamilton? Hulkenberg in 13th, Carlos Sainz 14th, Alexander Albon in 15th, 16th was Esteban Ocon, 17th, Yuki Tsunoda, 18th, Franco Colapinto, 19th, Pierre Gasly, and sadly, Ollie Behrman was the one that did not finish. This is the pixel representation, links in the description by F1 visualised with therace.com, and I thought this is brilliant. Norris and Piastri, I mean, look how close they finished. Russell, not too far behind, and then you had, Leclerc. I mean, you're looking at, a long way behind. DNF, sadly, for Behrman. Hamilton lapped. We're looking, was it plus 90 seconds or something ridiculous? It was, not particularly good at all, was it? So, moving forward, this is the fastest pit stops. I wanted to talk about this because McLaren nailed two of the season's fastest pit stops to McLaren. For Norris and Piastri, 1.94 seconds. Absolutely insane. 4th, obviously Ferrari, but 3rd, Red Bull Racing with Tsunoda, 1.97, the slowest pit stop, being Williams with not the slowest, but the 10th slowest, let's say, 2.49 with Williams, but that's the top 10. I mean, just over 6/10 of a second, pretty much. Ridiculous. So McLaren have their fastest season, 1.94, albeit I think it's 1.8, isn't it? The fastest of all time, again by McLaren. That was all the way back in 23 Qatar, I believe. So this was the 2025 Hungarian Grand Prix race pace. As you can see here, this lovely chart. And by F1 telemetry data. I mean, you look at Piastri's, is the fastest. He was on 2 stops, particularly faster than Lando Norris, which wasn't too bad, but you'd expect that simply because Lando Norris was on that 1 stopper. Piastri ended up being on that 2 stopper. George Russell, very similar to Lando, slightly to Lando Norris in the Mercedes, again on a 2-stopper. Leclerc on a 2-stopper. I mean, when you actually look at him, he's really consistent, as opposed to his teammate Lewis Hamilton. But then Hamilton had loads of traffic, and he started on those hard tyres. Behrman arguably the slowest all the way back here, but that's pretty much because I think he retired from the race, kind of early on. So it's a bit of a difficult one. And when you compare like Antonelli as well to George Russell, because you're Hungary, it's very hard to overtake. There are very many DRS trains. It reminds me of the trolley train in Hungary. And at that point, it's really going to affect your lap times anyway, isn't it? So these are the tyre strategies. Norris stopped on lap 31 from medium to hard. And that is the one that won him the race. The irony, I think, somewhat is with Lando Norris getting that absolutely awful start down to 4th, really ended up making him do that one stop because he simply could not get past Russell. He got past Alonso, didn't he, into 4th. Then he was behind George Russell. He was in DRS in the early part of that first stint, and he just couldn't get past, could he? So he ended up pitting, Russell ended up pitting, he ended up going all the way to lap 31, not quite halfway, but for mediums, not bad, and you kind of knew the hards were going to be good to the end. How good and fast they would be at the end is obviously another thing. Piastri pitted on lap 18 and lap 45, and he ended up, obviously, within a second of Lando Norris. He just didn't have enough pace to pass him. Is that because he used all his tyres up, because he had to try and catch Norris? I don't know. Some people have turned around and said, oh no, Piastri, he was screwed by McLaren. But at the time, that was the only thing Norris could really do. And everyone thought 2 stops going into this race weekend and going into the race. The data there suggested that 2 stops was going to be quicker anyway. And you saw how easily Piastri got past Leclerc, even though, Leclerc pitted on lap 19 and lap 40. So there was like a 5-lap difference between the tyres. They like to call it a delta, don't they? But there was a 5-lap difference between the tyres. So Piastri's tyres were 5 laps newer. And that's how early on he was able to get past Leclerc, but only 5 laps. And when you saw him go past Leclerc with ease, he braked so much later than Charles. You kind of thought, okay, he's just going to breeze past Lando Norris. Absolute cream cracker him. But no, that ended up not happening at all. And then when we look at Lewis Hamilton's race, he stopped on lap 42 on the hards. And yeah, he out the points, easily his worst race. We'll get into what Hamilton said a bit later. But there we go. Driver of the day. I can't really knock it. I think maybe you could give it to Norris, but Gabriel Bortoleto 6th in the kick, Sauber in what was not a wet race, not a funny thing with safety cars. Genuine pace there. Absolutely amazing. They're going to keep these. They're going to keep them, aren't they, for the Audi? So this is the driver standings. We've now got Piastri on 285 and Norris on 275. That's really important because instead of it being Lando Norris, and this is something that David Croft was very keen to say, had Lando Norris not won this race, he would have been 23, almost a win behind Piastri. So it was so important going with that momentum as well, going into the summer break for both of them, because now Piastri knows, okay, but I still lead that championship. Obviously, Max Verstappen looking less and less likely to be a contender. You never know. Now, George Russell very much 4th, 5th and 6th for Hamilton and Leclerc, and Kimi Antonelli sadly in 7th on 64 points. Then you've got Albon, Hulkenberg and Ocon. Now, when we look at the teams at standings, again, McLaren, Ferrari still in 2nd, but then I think they've got to watch over their back with Mercedes. Red Bull, no, because that second car is just ridiculous, isn't it? I think Red Bull are very much stuck in 4th place unless something changes. But when you look at Mercedes on 236, they can very much get that Ferrari for 2nd place. For what it means to them, I don't know. Now, speaking of our championship contenders, our championship leaders in the Constructors' Championship, well done, McLaren. 200 races for McLaren. Absolutely brilliant. 200 race wins for McLaren, that is, not 200 races. You've got people like Senna, Coulthard, Hamilton, Hakkinen, Prost, and obviously Hamilton, Bruce McLaren himself, James Hunt, Montoya, Kimi Raikkonen, Kovalainen, to name but a few. Hakkinen, obviously Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri there as well. And when we look at the race wins for McLaren, so we have 35 for Ayrton Senna, 30 for Prost, 21 for Hamilton, 20 for Hakkinen, 12 for Coulthard, then 9 for Hunt, 9 for Raikkonen, 9 for Norris, and the people on 8 are Niki Lauda, Button, Oscar Piastri, 6 for Danny Hulme, Emerson Fittipaldi on 5, 4 for John Watson and Fernando Alonso, 3 for Gerhard, 3 for Montoya, 2 for Peter Revson, and then the single ones, Bruce McLaren himself, along with Jochen Mass, Heikki Kovalainen, and of course, who could forget Daniel Ricciardo? But they are your 200 race, I sound like Jonathan Ross, race winners for McLaren. And let's not forget, yes, he didn't do particularly well. He finished behind Liam Lawson, but this was his 200th race for Red Bull. So really, really good there for Max Verstappen. As we know, there's going to be many more because he's staying with Red Bull, at least until next year. Now, let's talk about Ferrari and their massive. Essentially, Leclerc went from pole position, looking like he's going to win the race for the first 2/3 of the race, to 4th. But before we get into that, this is Lewis Hamilton. Now, if you listened to the show yesterday, What Lewis Hamilton said, he's useless after qualifying, didn't qualify very well. He's pretty much called himself useless, and Ferrari should put another driver in. But let's see what is said in this interview.
When we spoke to you yesterday, you made a comment that I know has been picked up everywhere, and you said change the driver. Can you just tell me, do you genuinely feel that way? Is there a point right now that you just don't have the answers, and so you're finding it really difficult to pick yourself up, or can you help us understand the comment a bit more?
Not particularly. When you have a feeling, you have a feeling. And there's
You have a feeling
going on in the background that it's not great. So, yeah.
You lost your love of racing right now?
No, I still love racing.
I mean, this is a broken man at the moment, isn't it? This is almost a broken man, but we know. I mean, Silverstone could have been a contender for pole. Could have been a contender, arguably. I mean, he could have been easily a contender for the podium. In Belgium, he had the speed there. He just messed up in qualifying. Yes, I understand that. But then he had an absolutely amazing Belgium Grand Prix comeback, didn't he? To 7th from 18th, which was good in itself. Really good moves. So he's really beating up himself. It sounds like it's the Lewis Hamilton pity brigade. Yeah, and I think he'll be back in it. He'll be back. I think, along with a few other people, definitely need that summer break. I'm not too worried. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and it's not the first. I don't think it's going to be the last time Hamilton said this as well. But he needs that summer break. So Charles Leclerc, this one made me laugh. I mean, the Twitter handle itself is called the best of Charles Leclerc, quali day and race day. Pretty much sums it up really for Charles Leclerc, doesn't it? I mean, let's have a look at the myriad of radio calls from Charles Leclerc. He says, "I can feel what we discussed before the race. We need to discuss those things before doing those." Not too sure what that means. Is that set up? It's got to be set up rather than strategy. And said, "We are going to lose this race with these things. We are losing so much time." And finally, the absolute essay. It's like a dissertation, isn't it, this radio call? He said, "This is so incredibly frustrating. We've lost all competitiveness. You just have to listen to me. I would have found a different way of managing those issues. Now it's undrivable. It's a miracle if we finish on the podium." Well, he was right about that. They did get points, but they didn't finish on the podium, sadly. So I'm not too sure, but Ferrari, I think they're probably quite happy it's in the summer break as well, especially with Fred Vass has been renewed for the next few years, so it's going to be really interesting to see where they go from there and what happens. I'd like to comment also, fantastically well done for Aston Martin on their P5 and P7. I mean, bear in mind, they were one of the slowest people in Belgium for the Belgian Grand Prix in terms of their car. They were like nowhere. And then to finish P5, P7 at the very next race, it shows you, one, how difficult it is to set these ground effect cars up, and two, how competitive the whole field is. So well done for both Fernando and Lance Stroll. Now, let's talk penalties. Verstappen versus Hamilton at Hungary. Spoiler alert, Verstappen didn't get a penalty. We'll get into that and the hows and whys. But what I think is interesting is the way Max is coming on there. When you actually look at the replay, which I don't have, if he didn't force Hamilton off the track, I'm happy with that, and I'm happy there's no penalty. But what I'd like to say is, if Hamilton didn't move, I believe they would have hit each other. I mean, he kind of like scared Hamilton off the track, so to speak. Did Max Verstappen, and it's yes, no penalty, but it's another classic of Max. He just can't race fair, can he? Really, this guy, the talented as he is, there are times maybe he just sees red when he sees Hamilton, he just can't race. When you're looking at your top 10 drivers of all time, for me personally, that is always going to be an issue with someone like Max that can't race, which is why I couldn't put him as number one, the GOAT. He's certainly potentially in the conversation, but when I say conversation, the minute that comes out, the fact that this guy can't race fair is always going to be an issue. And even Sam Bird said, "I think it's more Verstappen's fault than Hamilton's on this occasion," on BBC Radio 5 Live, which I agree with. I understand there's no penalty because it was almost Hamilton's choice to leave the circuit to avoid. I don't think he was close enough to be really, to be pushed off. I mean, if they didn't hit each other, there would have been a bit of space there, but there we go. So, but this is what I thought was interesting, is the F1 Twitter itself, obviously by different people, and it's not run by the stewards, but it said Hamilton has to run wide as Verstappen goes on the chart, has to run wide. has to run wide because of Verstappen. Look at that, it's massively different there, but no penalty. And the reason why, well, here we go. Max Verstappen is going to face no further action. He overtook Hamilton for 11th place at turn 4. Verstappen's car was only marginally alongside Hamilton at the time of the incident. When you go back there, yes, it very much was. He didn't have the, when you look at the overtaking guidelines, he didn't really tick hardly any of the boxes, did he? The incident was quickly noted, and then obviously they're going to investigate it after the race. The drivers, along with the team representative, were required to meet the stewards. Hamilton, though, did not attend. They confirmed that Verstappen will face no further action, as the incident did not count as forcing another driver off track, despite the ambitious nature of the overtaking attempt. Okay, fair enough. Okay, I don't think Verstappen would have cared at that point, really, but there we go. So this was, though, and to be fair, this is the last thing we'll talk about. Charles Leclerc, I think, deserved the 5-second penalty. When you look, here is, as you can see here, here's George Russell. This is the second time he has attempted to pass Charles Leclerc. The lap before, Charles sort of moved under braking, but this time, as you can see, George Russell, he's coming on, and he's like, right, okay, now he's made it. George, at this point, has made it very clear. I'm going to try and pass you. Yes, you are allowed one move, and Leclerc hasn't decided. Now you can see the end of the pit lane here, so we're getting near the braking zone. And the minute he's like, I'm going to pass, now, look, the minute he does it, you can see Leclerc, yeah, he's now turned. He's turned, and they're kind of braking, they're in the braking zone, and he's trying to cover him. I think Leclerc now, at this point, Leclerc realises, if I carry on anymore, we're going to have a crash. And he's like, no, we're good. It was hard racing. And then George Russell makes it through. I think moving under the braking zone, because he did it the lap before, and I do believe he did, it was hard racing. A 5-second, I don't really want a 10-second. I think was too harsh, maybe. But it was dangerous. But then you could also make an argument. It is just hard racing, and we know how much George Russell likes to moan on the radio. And he was like, no, yeah, but I do think this is. I mean, look, they nearly caused a collision. Had George Russell not been moving as well, they nearly caused a collision. George Russell here had to move again. So I completely understand why it went to the stewards. But there we go. Comment below. Let us know what you think. Anyway, congratulations to Lando Norris, who has not the championship lead, but he very much has the momentum going into the summer break. Obviously, we will be around during the summer break. With Formula 1 stuff, with rally news as well, and the touring cars happen this weekend, so we need to, at some point next week, we'll be talking about that. But there we go. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to do more and help out just a tiny bit more, if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. It will give us a smile. If you're already subscribed or you want to help more, as well as subscribe, just hit that like button. It does make a difference. But until then, we will speak to you soon. Thank you very much for watching. But above all else, stay safe.